hopefully one day at some point in life, we'll be able to inspire someone to go after their next dream, even if it's not running related, just go after something that they genuinely thought wasn't possible. Whenever I was 8 years old, I never ever would have imagined being where I am right now. So to just hopefully help somebody get to that point where they're like, maybe I really can do anything, because I agree with Bob, age never really should be a factor.
Hello, intrepid listeners, and welcome to the Carpe Diem Live Your Dream podcast. Unless you're an ultra runner, you probably haven't heard of the Badwater 135 race. It's considered one of the toughest out there. 135 miles starting in Death Valley in the hottest month of the year, with 14,000 feet of elevation gain and temps exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's by invitation only, with a small field of just 100 elite runners. I was intrigued by this race because I hate exercising in the heat. So I reached out to a couple of the finishers, and not just any finisher. Today is a fun episode because I have two. I have Kaylee Frederick, the youngest person to ever finish the Badwater 135, and Bob Becker, the oldest person to ever finish it. They are such a charming pair who describe the same race from very different perspectives. Enjoy the show. Okay, Kaylee and Bob, welcome to the show. I am thrilled to have both of you. You guys are like bookends to the Badwater 135 Ultramarathon. And I'm going to let the audience guess who's on which end of the bookshelf. Can you guys each introduce yourself briefly and talk a little bit about how you ended up at the Badwater 135 this year? Kaylee, why don't you start?
So I started running when I was pretty young. I started running when I was just 7 years old, but I didn't get into ultras until I was 14. And then really quickly, whenever I got into ultra marathons, I ran my first 50K and 50 miler when I was 14. And I just kind of realized that's what I wanted to do. I didn't really have any interest in running the short races anymore, like marathons or under. Just didn't have any interest in, because I knew that ultras was kind of my thing. And so I just kept looking for bigger races to do. I ran my first 100 miler when I was 16, and then my first 200 miler when I was 17. I was like, well, I've already done 200-mile race. Now what do I do? So my friend Keith Straw, who at the time was an 8-time Badwater finisher and is now a 9-time finisher, told me about Badwater, and he was like, hey, I think you could be the youngest person to ever do this race. And I was like, well, Keith is such an experienced runner. He had run over 500 marathons, over 100 milers. If he thinks I could do it, well, I guess I should just trust him a little bit. So I applied whenever I was 18 years old, and I got in, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my entire life to run Badwater that first year.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to be coming back to that on a couple of points in a minute. I think you just gave away which end of the bookshelf you're on. So, Bob, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on the other end of the bookshelf for sure. Yeah, I ran the mile back in high school. I played sports as an adult, but wasn't really a runner other than just to stay in shape. Went to the gym and, played racquetball and did all kinds of other sports. I ran my first marathon in 2002. I was 57 at the time. It was just one of those things where I had moved from Minnesota down to Florida, and some friends up there said, hey, we're going to run Grandma's Marathon. Why don't you come up and join us? And it sounded like a good excuse to see my friends. So I literally went out and bought a pair of running shoes and asked the people in the store, what do I do now? And they put me in touch with a marathon training group. So I trained for the race, ran it in June, and it was going to be a one and done, but I did well and I qualified for Boston. So I said, well, I got to do that. So I did Boston the following year and continued running with a group of friends here in Fort Lauderdale. And in 2004, one of them mentioned the Marathon des Sables and asked if I had ever heard of it. And he said it was an ultramarathon, and I asked him what an ultramarathon was. I had no idea. And that was, 20 years ago. The world has changed since then. But anyway, I checked it out and realized this was a 250-kilometer stage race in the Sahara Desert in Morocco in April the following year. when I was turning 60 and Jared was turning 40. And we said, hey, why don't we give ourselves a birthday present and go do this crazy thing? And that's how it started. I had no plan. It just kind of happened, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And that was my first ultra.
You too. There's so much I want to talk to you about. So let me just start with a couple comments, Bob, on your intro. So that was Grandma's marathon you did in
It
Duluth,
was,
Minnesota?
yes, that's right, yeah.
That is a classic. I've never done it, but I've driven that route many, many times along Two Harbor, along the Lake Superior. And what's crazy about that race, you tell me, but from the starting line, you can essentially see the finish line because the lake shore just goes in a big curve
Right.
and you can see downtown Duluth. And isn't it like you run and run and run and downtown Duluth still looks the same distance away?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're absolutely right about that. It's a beautiful race. But it
Yeah.
reminds me of, and I would imagine Kaylee will agree that when you are running Badwater, the last 13 miles is a climb up Mount Whitney Portal Road, which begins in the town of Lone Pine, and you start seeing the mountain way, way off in the distance, and just like Duluth, you never get there. It's just absolutely that it's almost depressing because it's so far away and yet it looks so close. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Hey, Bob, you didn't say what is your age because I think you made a Badwater 135 record this year, right?
I did, yeah. I'm 80 years young. Yeah, I became the oldest finisher of Badwater this year, and that which was my goal.
And you're damn proud of it. You ought to be. You better be. That's really impressive.
Well, it's
Uh,
it's gratifying. Thank you.
I feel like I might be inadvertently following your footsteps because I did my first ultra when I was 58.
Hmm.
So I've just gotten into these things and we'll see. If only I could break your record at Badwater someday.
Oh, it's there to be broken,
Oh,
Dale. Yeah, my first ultra at the MDS was when I was 60. So yeah, very, very close.
wow. Yeah. And Kaylee, so you were saying you did your first marathon at age 14 and then you just decided that the long distance stuff was for you, right?
Yep, pretty much.
It's pretty unusual for someone at your age to be into ultras. What do you think did it for you?
Um, I feel like not a lot of young people, one, even know it's a thing. I feel like a lot of people aren't introduced to the sport until they are older. So I think I was just introduced to it whenever I was younger because I had a friend who told me about ultras and I was able to crew for her at her first 100-mile race while I was 14. I just saw all those people there suffering and struggling through their first 100-mile races and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So I feel like just being introduced to it at a young age, I also just fell in love with the community. It's so much different than just the marathoning community or just the road running community. And I knew it was something I wanted to be a part of.
May I make a comment? Kaylee said she fell in love with the people in the sport. Well, people in the sport fell in love with her too. So there you go.
Well, and I think, Bob, for you, if I've read the accurate reports of you, you do this in large part because of the community. And it's not like this is your only race. What is it you do in the ultra world?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. The thing that appealed to me from the very start was that sense of camaraderie and community that's very, very much part of the race. I think almost by definition, people that race like this are A-type personalities. We're competitive. But the thing that differentiates ultra running is when you're out there competing against somebody and you see someone out there having a problem, maybe they've run out of water or whatever the issue is, you stop and help them. And then you get up again and you want to beat their brains out. So you still have the competitive edge, but the next problem out there could be you, and that's kind of the attitude in this sport. So yeah, in 2005 was Marathon des Sables for me, and then the next year or so, just running here in Fort Lauderdale, talking with friends, we realized there really weren't any other ultra marathons at all in South Florida, none. There were some in the state, but nothing down here. So a couple of us got together and thought that maybe running the Florida Keys, running across all 40 islands from Key Largo to Key West, which is 100 miles, could perhaps become an ultra. So in 2007, five of us got together with seven people crewing us, and we ran the route. We ran the keys and thought, yeah, this could be something. So the next year, 2008, Keys 100 was born. I decided to become a race director, having absolutely no idea what I was doing. And from that point until today, 18 years later, I've been a full-time race director, having created other races as well. That's what I've been doing. So my passion, my sport also became my work, and it's been a phenomenal 18 years, enjoying every minute of it.
And that must be a fascinating race across all those causeways and bridges and different keys.
Yeah, it's a beautiful race. You've got the Atlantic on one side and the Florida based / Caribbean on the other side. Unless you don't like turquoise, it's really pretty, and but it's also very challenging. It's not just the distance; it's the heat factor because the race is in May. So it's a much tougher race than it looks like on paper. But at the end of the day, it is a great experience, and you wind up in Key West, which is a fun, funky town to hang out in for a day or two if your schedule will allow it.
Yeah. Yeah. My problem, both of you, is every time I interview somebody on this podcast, I kind of want to do what they just mentioned. And so whether it's the Badwater or the Keys 100 or any of these things, I just get an itch to sign up. But we'll see where that one goes.
Okay.
Kaylee, tell us a little bit more about the Badwater 135 as a race.
Yeah, so Badwater 135 is notoriously known as the world's toughest foot race because it takes place in July in Death Valley, California, which has the highest recorded temperatures. It's usually around 120s or hotter during the race. It starts at Badwater Basin, which is the lowest point in the Western Hemisphere, and then it traverses 3 mountains you have to climb, and you end at the top of a mountain, Whitney Portal, which is the trailhead to get to Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the lower 48. So you're going through insanely hot conditions, 135 miles with about 14,000 feet of elevation gain. So it's not a flat race, even though it is all on the road. And then they do only accept 100 athletes that have to go through like an application where you have to submit your race resume. There's things you must do. So as a newbie, you would have to have at least 4 100-mile races. And then same for returning athletes. There's certain qualification standards you have to meet just to make sure that you actually can complete the race. So even getting to the start line is a huge accomplishment, let alone being able to make it all 135 miles to get to the finish line.
So pick that apart. Tell me about the heat, Bob. You know, you're a Florida guy. I'm a northern climate guy, so the heat really bothers me. 115, 120 degrees running like that on pavement. How do you do that, Bob? What's different?
Yeah, well, it's pretty warm, no question about it. Yeah, the thing that's interesting out there is that it gets so very, very hot during the day, and what's around you is sand and rock, plus the road, of course, all of which absorb that heat, and only gradually does it escape. When the sun goes down, it doesn't automatically cool off. It stays hot basically all through the night. This race starts at night. So basically, you're running all through the night, and then the next morning, the sun comes up and it starts getting real hot again. Kaylee and I kind of run different races, and we can certainly talk about that. I finished in 45 hours flat. You have 48 hours to finish. I finished in 45 hours. She finished in 31 and change. So her race is a different race than mine, and she's getting to certain places on the course at different hours than I am. So for me, that first day, climbing up over the first of the mountains she talked about and down the other side, you end up in an area called Panamint Valley, which at the time of day I was there was extremely hot. In fact, there was so much heat being radiated back from the road that I had to put long pants on because my legs were burning. So yeah, you have to look for techniques to deal with the heat, and that's not even talking about keeping your body temp under control by using ice and proper hydration and all those things. But it is extremely hot. That's one of the key ingredients, the key difficulties of the race. It's the distance, it's the climbing, it's the heat, and also the fact that if you're a slow guy like me, you're running through 2 nights. So your body clock is really fouled up, and that's one of the big challenges running through those 2 nights for me.
Kaylee, what about you? How did the heat affect you?
Usually races like Badwater or Keys where there's so much heat being absorbed and reflected back up by the road, I get really bad heat rash. So like when I ran Keys, my entire legs were covered in heat rash. If you've never had heat rash, it gets rather painful. Same with Badwater the first year. I had such bad heat rash. And then we realized for me, if we just cover my legs in Desitin, I think it's zinc oxide that's in there. I don't know the actual chemical term of what it is, but we just covered my legs in that because I don't really like running in sun pants. I know some people like that. I'm just not a fan. So if you look at any pictures of me from this year, you can see that my legs are completely white. And it's just from that because it literally doesn't let the heat get through because it's so thick. Whereas like sunscreen, if I could have sunscreen on, I would still get heat rash. But using diaper cream actually helps prevent that heat rash. And then also if I would have spots of heat rash, it helps kind of make it feel better because it also has hydrocortisone in it.
Wow. So, okay, completely covering yourself or your legs in diaper rash cream. That's the first I've heard for how to handle interesting, challenging environments. Bob, what was a technique that you had to adapt to for this race?
Well, because of the heat factor, it's extremely important to stay on plan with your hydration, nutrition, electrolyte replacement in particular, and then, of course, using ice to keep yourself cooled off. So you're not going to be able to finish a race like this unless you're taking in calories the entire time. And for me, then for most runners, you can actually digest about 200 to 250 calories an hour. That's about it. But it's really important to stay on plan. And yet, when you're out there, inevitably there are going to be times when you just don't want to eat anything. The beauty of this race is that you are required to have a support crew that leapfrogs you down the course in their vehicle, and you meet up every couple of miles. That's up to the runner and the crew how often they do that, but a couple of miles is fairly typical to replace your bottle of water, to get food, to fix blisters, whatever it is that you need from the people supporting you. Again, by keeping me on a very specific plan, that's how I was able to keep my body in shape to run the whole 135 without cramping or otherwise bonking, and able to get to the finish line. The crew actually records everything I drink, everything I eat, every time I pee, to be sure that I'm hydrating adequately.
I had a gel every half an hour on the hour, did not miss one. So I had over 60 gels. And then I had one peanut butter and jelly near the beginning of the race and a handful of French fries. But I pretty much just survived off of gels and only gels.
Wow, yeah, I can't do more than about two of those.
I was sick of them by the end, but they were working. So
Digestive issues are pretty commonplace in these long races. And what I've found that works for me is, like Kaylee, using gels, but also I use Ensure, what I like to call the old lady drink, which gives you a little bit of fat and protein in addition to carbs. And the key here is that these are fluids and gels and very, very easily digestible. Some ultra runners have an iron stomach and they can eat solid food. And if you can eat real food during a race, that's great. But I can't. So by sticking to liquids, gels, things like, applesauce, I don't have digestive issues because my body's able to digest without too much difficulty.
Yeah, I just think in that environment with that dry heat, that the perspiration volume would be really high, that you would have to take in a lot of liquids to replace that. They do weigh-ins periodically during that race, right? To make sure that is that correct or no?
Yeah, in that race, only at the start, but your weight is written on the back of your bib. Kaylee, I can't remember if we had a formal weigh-in at Darwin or anywhere else. Can you remember?
no, I don't think so. I think it's just at the beginning of the race. So if there was an emergency and you had to be taken to the hospital, they could weigh you there and then see if you lost a lot of weight or gained a lot of weight to know how they need to go about helping you.
Oh, okay. It's like a precaution thing for dehydration. Well, give a little play by play, each of you. And like you said earlier, Bob, the two of you ran very different races. I mean, same course, but different races just because of the pace. But give a little overview of your race strategy or race plan and the highs and lows throughout. Bob, maybe you start.
My goal is to reach the finish line. I have 48 hours to complete the race. Again, my goal was to become the oldest finisher. To be able to do that, I know that I'm going to be walking at least half of the race. So rather than starting running the whole time until I can't run anymore and then doing what we call a death march to the finish line, I do a mix of running and walking right from the beginning. What that typically means is all the other runners start off very quickly getting ahead of me, and I'm back at the back of the pack. But in this race, 2/3 of the runners are rookies. They've never been out there before. And a lot of them make the rookie mistake of going out too fast. And inevitably, I wind up catching some of those runners before I get to the finish line. Or as I like to say, picking off a few of the youngins. And they're all youngins, right? So it's, there's a mantra that says go slow to go fast in ultra running. And that works for me. So I have a best case and worst case race plan. That is a pacing that will get me to certain checkpoints at a certain time, best case, worst case. And my crew needs to keep me within those parameters. And if we do that, then I'm going to be able to make those cutoffs and finish the race. For me, it's all about pacing within those limits to get me to those cutoffs before the cutoff times and to the finish line before the 48 hours expires. That plan, I'm sure, is quite different from Kaylee, who's trying, and I'll let her speak for herself, but she's very, very competitive. So her goals are different than mine. Mine is to just finish.
Yeah, and you did. Wow. Kaylee, what was your strategy?
This year, I had a goal of setting the record for the female 20 to 29 age group, which was 32:30 is the time that I had to run. But I also didn't really know how to avoid a mid-race crash if I fell off pace or something like that. So my crew chief made up pace charts for 30 hours, 31 hours, and 33 hours. But I didn't look at any of them, and they didn't tell me anything about my pacing the entire race. So I was pretty much just supposed to run on feel. I knew generally, like, I'm obviously not going to sprint at the beginning and run all out. I knew I had to mix in walking. And I knew on the climbs, I did 100-second walk, 20-second run. So I did a 5-to-1 ratio on all the climbs. So I knew things like that, but I didn't know my exact splits. I didn't know I'm supposed to be at Panamint Springs at this time. Knew nothing like that. I just went on feel. At the end, I told my crew chief that if he thought it would help me stay motivated, once I hit the 50K mark to go, he could tell me my splits, and like he could tell me I have to keep this pace. And once we hit the 50K mark, I was like, I don't want to know anything. It's too early. I'm just going to keep running on feel. But then once I hit Lone Pine, when I only had a half marathon to go, in order to break the course record for the female age group, I had to run a decently fast time up that mountain, which I could do, but I would have needed to know. So I think we were
Yeah.
all kind of on the same page that he was going to tell me. So my crew chief jumped in and paced me. He was like, hey, here's the situation. You've run such a good race all day long. This is the pace you're going to do up this mountain so that you can break this course record. And that's just what it is. And I was like, okay, you're right. And then the last half marathon, I actually did the third fastest time. The only people that got from Lone Pine to the finish faster than me was the second place male finisher and the third place male finisher, which I think is absolutely crazy. I don't know how I managed that, but it worked out, and I actually ended up, I think maybe like 30 some minutes ahead of the record that I was trying to break. So I was very happy with it.
Crazy. Wow. You're right. Two very different races, but both just amazing. Let me ask a question of each of you. It's a tough race. You gotta hurt. This stuff is miserable. Kaylee, you're slathering on diaper cream so why do you do this? Bob?
I love the adventure of these races, the not knowing what's around that next corner, and basically challenging myself to see if it's something I can still do. I've always had this sense that if somebody else can do something, why can't I? Within reason. So part of it is picking a race that's, you may think this may sound crazy, but that's age appropriate. Most people would not say Badwater is, but age age appropriate and condition appropriate. What I mean by that is,
Badwater 135 couldn't be further from that definition, Bob, for anybody. But go
well,
ahead, believe it yourself.
all
That's
right.
good.
Well, I do. For me, Badwater, I've been out there at Badwater 18 years in a row. This was the sixth time I've run the race,
Oh,
and I've also crewed many times for other runners and been on the race staff. So I'm very familiar with the course and with the whole culture of the race, and
yeah.
and that's why I can say with a straight face that it's for me appropriate. But if you take a race like Hard Rock as an example, which is in the Colorado Rockies, you said you were out there racing at anywhere from, I think it's like 10 to 14,000 feet, and it's all extremely vertical, very technical. I live in flat Florida at sea level. There's like no way I could train for a race like that. It would be absolutely impossible. Not for the vertical nature of it, not for the altitude. There's just no way. So that would not make any sense at all. So it has to be something that makes sense. But otherwise, I really don't think that my age is a factor. And in most cases, if I'm reasonable about it, that I can't compete and finish.
Kaylee, what about you?
I feel like there's so many reasons that I run. It's hard to really put it all into one generalized category, but I feel like one of the big things for me is that running ultras, it's a pain you can control. So like, whereas if you have emotional trauma or things happen in your life, you don't really have control over it all. But at least in running, you can control that. And if you're 95 miles into a 100-mile race and your feet hurt so dang bad and you're so dang tired, that's pain that you earned. You worked really hard to feel like that. So live that up because you won't get to feel like that for who knows how long, whenever your next race is. And then also kind of like Bob said, just having the friends and the community is absolutely amazing. And hopefully one day at some point in life, we'll be able to inspire someone to go after their next dream, even if it's not running related, just go after something that they genuinely thought wasn't possible. Whenever I was 8 years old, I never ever would have imagined being where I am right now. So to just hopefully help somebody get to that point where they're like, maybe I really can do anything. Because I agree with Bob, age never really should be a factor.
There you go.
Listen to that, Bob. Kaylee's saying, when I was 8 years old, I couldn't imagine and you and I are sitting there like, when I was 55, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I'm listening to her and I'm thinking to myself, one of the things we like to say is that pain is temporary, but bragging rights are forever, and that's kind of how you feel when you cross the finish line. So that's another motivator for getting up and getting out there.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. For me personally, I think and Bob, you kind of said I'm racing against myself to see, can I do it? What can I do? And kind of like you were describing, I'll say, I should be able to do that. Like those people are doing it. I should be able to do that. And can I? And I want to know the answer. It's kind of a curiosity factor.
Exactly.
Well, talk a little bit about the physical versus mental fortitude required in a race like this.
Kaylee, you want to go first?
Sure. For me personally, I'd say that 95% of running is mental. Just because physically I train every single day. I've been working with my coach for almost 2 years now. So like physically, I know like I go into races physically prepared to hit whatever goals we have set. But mentally, you can completely make or break your race. And I kind of talked about that I'm still trying to figure it out because my goals for every race are different. So I have to figure out what's the best approach going in so that I can mentally stay on top of it. For me, it's not so much being like mentally tough enough to finish because I will walk it into the finish if I have to, but it's just staying locked into the point where we don't let the bad voices take over, especially now that I'm trying to become more competitive. It's really easy to let the bad voices slip in. That's just, I'm sure we all have, that say you're not good enough, you can't do it. And if you let them take control, well, then your race is kind of over, because how do you combat your brain that's telling you nothing other than you can't do this? In my head, the bad voices, they're them, they're over in the corner, and I have to make sure I don't lose my voice and my Kaylee voice. Even if they're fighting back and forth, one is saying, you're not good enough. As long as I still have that rational Kaylee voice that's like, wait, we trained for this. We can do it. So even if they're fighting, that's okay, because at least there's a little fight. But if we just completely give in, then it's all over.
Yeah. Yeah, Bob, what's going on in your head during a race like that?
Yeah, it's interesting that Kaylee said, yeah, 90% of it is mental, because there's a well-known Canadian ultra runner and adventurer whose name is Ray Zahab. And Ray is a very quotable guy. And one of his best is that ultra running is 90% mental and the rest is in your head. So, yeah, I agree with Kaylee that
Yeah.
so much of it is that. But during the race, there are inevitably those low spots when you're asking yourself, what the heck am I doing out here? Why, this doesn't make any sense. Any sane person, well, of course, insanity is a prerequisite, I think. But anyway, any sane person would not be doing this. And then I always remember that I chose to be out here and I focus on the goal, my reason for being there. Of course, this year at Badwater, it was to break a record. When you do that, you can usually work yourself through those low spots. And yeah, like I said, I agree with her. So much of it is mental.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. So we're going to play a little game here. I'm going to ask you two questions. When I ask it, I'm going to count to three, and I want you to both give your answer simultaneously. And I just want a one word or two word adjective that describes the Badwater 135. And you can't use the word bad because it's already got bad in the name. All right. So here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Surreal.
Spectacular.
Okay. Okay. I like those. This question is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've both known each other for a couple few years, right?
Yeah.
Yes, since Kaylee's first Badwater.
Yeah.
Okay. In one or two words, describe the other person. 1, 2, 3.
Truly
Inspiring.
extraordinary.
Okay. And now, because you said it at the same time, no one will be able to know what you said. So, Kaylee, how did you describe Bob?
Inspiring.
Oh. And Bob, how did you describe Kaylee?
Truly extraordinary.
Yeah. That's how I feel both of you guys are. Really impressive. Well, this has been fantastic. I'm so thrilled I had both of you on this. I have one final question as I ask all my guests, and that is, what is your next big dream, adventure, or goal? It could be completely outside the running world. Kaylee?
Most of my goals in life have to do with running. So my next really big race is the 24-hour world championship on October 18th, actually. So that's coming up really soon. Aside from that, I just have a couple other races where I want to set course records and things like that. Eventually, like the Laurel Highlands Ultra, I'd like to set the women's course record there. Way in the future, I would like to win Badwater, but that's not going to be for a few years. Also, way in the future, it would be really cool to set the 24-hour world record, but those are like really high goals that aren't going to happen for a while. So right now, for the foreseeable future, it would probably be running a 150-mile split in a 24-hour race.
150 miles in 24 hours. Huh. What is the 24-hour record?
The women's record is right around 170 miles.
That's crazy. Bob, what about you?
Yeah, I'm like Kaylee. Everything is basically running related. My next short-term goal is one of the races that I produce and direct is the Daytona 100 in December. And making that a big success is my closest short-term goal. And next year, I haven't totally decided on my quote-unquote A race, long race, but I'm looking closely at the Denali 135 up in Alaska, where I've never been. So that may well be my next big race. And whatever it is, looking forward to continuing to run for a while longer, as long as I can.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm going to have to keep track of both of you on some of these things. Thank you so much for the time today. I learned a lot and I was very entertained, and I appreciate both of you joining together. That was fun.
Thank you, Dale. And thanks, Kaylee. I agree. A lot of fun talking with you both.
Yeah, thank you for having us both on. I think it is really, really cool to have two such different perspectives just because we are a solid 60 years apart in age.
Yeah, and I'm thinking between the two of you, you got 100 years. All right. Well, you two have a good day. Keep on running.
Thank you, Dale.
Thanks for listening to the Carpe Diem Live Your Dream podcast. If you like the show, there's nothing more valuable to me than you following it and sharing it with others. I drop a new episode every Friday, so tune in again for another great adventure story. And check out the accompanying website, www.gocarpediemnow.com, and then go seize the day and live your dream.